2 weeks before our wedding, I learned the truth about my fiance's past. My name is Michael, and I'm 28. For the past 4 years, I've been with my now ex-fiancée, Bianca, who's also 28. We met at a mutual friends party 4 years ago. Bianca was the kind of woman who turned heads, tall, fit, and stunningly beautiful. Every guy at that party was eyeing her, but it wasn't just her looks that drew me in. It was her bright, bubbly personality and the way she could be so effortlessly clumsy despite looking like a model. We hit it off right away. After the party, we started texting back and forth, and 3 days later we went on our first date. Bianca wasn't the type to rush into things. We went on several dates before anything physical happened. She said she wanted to get to know me first. I respected that. Honestly, I found it refreshing because I've always been turned off by women who sleep around too easily. To me, self-respect matters. After a few weeks of dating, we made it official, and everything just clicked. Bianca and I shared so many interests: gaming, web novels, late-night binge sessions. It all felt natural. Our relationship was easy, passionate, and deep. And yeah, the physical side was amazing too. I was convinced she was the one. Fast forward 4 years later, and we were 2 weeks away from getting married. That's when everything fell apart. I ran into Natalie, the friend who had introduced us. I hadn't seen her in years, not since she moved to Spain with her husband. We were catching up at a coffee shop, and when I mentioned that Bianca and I were engaged, her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of smiling or congratulating me, Natalie went pale. Her eyes widened and she looked almost horrified. "What's wrong?" I asked, already feeling a knot forming in my stomach. Natalie hesitated, her lips parting and closing as if she was debating whether to say it. Finally, she sighed. "Michael, I didn't think you two would get this serious," she said. Confused, I asked why. What she told me next made my blood run cold. Natalie explained that back in college, Bianca was passed around by a group of 4 guys. Apparently, they had all slept with her, regularly, and treated her like a casual hookup. Natalie said one of the guys had bragged about it, saying Bianca was always down for it and never seemed to mind. I was stunned. This couldn't be true. Bianca had always been so open with me. We shared everything. How could she have kept something like this from me? "Why would you even introduce me to her if you knew about this?" I asked. Natalie's eyes dropped to the table. "Honestly, I thought it was just a party thing. I figured you'd have some fun with her, not marry her." My heart hammered in my chest. I stood up and walked out before I said something I'd regret. When I got home, Bianca was on the couch scrolling through her phone. I sat down across from her, and without any small talk, I asked her about what Natalie had said. Her face crumpled immediately. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she started shaking. I didn't know you'd ever find out," she whispered. Through choked sobs, Bianca admitted that back in college, she was close with those guys. She thought they were her friends. They shared the same interests, and it was easy to be around them. But over time, they started treating her less like a friend and more like a convenience. "I didn't think of it that way at the time," she said. "I thought they actually liked me. But looking back, I realized they were just using me." She insisted that since we started dating, she had been completely faithful to me. She swore that she loved me and had never cheated. "I didn't tell you because I was ashamed," she said. "I thought if you knew, you'd see me differently." She was right. My mind was a blur. I told her I needed some space to think. She begged me not to leave, clutching my hand as tears streamed down her face. "Please, Michael," she whispered. "I love you. I need you." I told her I wasn't making any decisions yet. But we should probably postpone the wedding. Her sobs filled the room as I grabbed some essentials and left to stay at a motel across the city. Seeking advice. The next day, Bianca bombarded my phone with texts and calls. "I love you. Please come home. Let's talk." I ignored them all. Eventually, she tracked me down. I'd forgotten we still shared our location. When I opened the door and saw her standing there with puffy eyes and trembling hands, I told her firmly that I needed more time. This was bigger than a quick apology. That evening, I called Steve. My best friend. If anyone would give me an honest opinion, it was him. We met at a bar. After a few shots, I told him everything. Steve listened carefully, then leaned back and sighed. Look, man, I get that it was before you two met, he said. But why didn't she tell you? You've been together for 4 years. I don't know, I admitted. Steve narrowed his eyes. Be honest with yourself. Do you think she loves you for you? Or are you just the safe guy after her wild phase? I didn't answer. Look, Steve continued, she didn't cheat on you. But you can't ignore that feeling in your gut. If you can't trust her anymore, that's a problem. I spent the next 3 days replaying our relationship over and over in my mind. Bianca had been everything I wanted, kind, supportive, loyal. But now I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined those guys using her like some kind of toy. I hated that I thought that way, but I couldn't help it. The trust was gone. When I finally called Bianca over, she looked hopeful. Her eyes were red from crying, but she managed a weak smile. I sat down and took a deep breath. I've thought about this a lot, I said. I love you, Bianca, but I don't think I can get past this. Her face crumpled. It's not about your past, I added. It's about the fact that you didn't tell me. I've always been honest with you about my life, but now I feel like I didn't really know you at all. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Michael, please. I'm sorry, I said softly, but we can't go through with the wedding. Bianca's sobs filled the room as I stood up and walked toward the door. I stopped for a moment, looking back at the woman I had thought I'd spend my life with. I hope you find peace, I said. And then I walked away.